everyone. Thought I'd do something a bit different. Every week I'm going to talk about dinosaurs. I'm going to try and post one video a week discussing one particular dinosaur. If you like just sitting back and listening and watching to a nerd discuss one of his favourite topics, learning a bit about dinosaurs, maybe joining in a discussion, please join me every week. Today we're going to talk about Stygimoloch. This animal was depicted in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom fairly accurately. The skull itself is a clue to its name. The word Stygimoloch actually means demon from the river Styx. It's a nod to the mythological river of the underworld and the ancient deity Moloch. You can see why they gave it this intense name with its skull, right? The keratin formations, which are, by the way, what our nails are made of, our fingernails, our hair structures. In dinosaurs, this forms mostly things like the scales, the bumps, but also feathers in a lot of cases. There's some debate as to whether or not this animal had feathers. In some depictions, proto-feathers are reasonable to suggest. In other cases, like in the depiction with Jurassic World, it could have been scaling. There's not enough evidence to suggest that this non-avian dinosaur had feathers or not. There's a likelihood it had some feather-like structures. It was around during the late Cretaceous, 70 to 66 million years ago, around the same time that animals like Deinonychus, a raptorid animal, we probably would have been hunting it, along with other very famous animals of the late Cretaceous, such as Tyrannosaurus rex, Triceratops, and others. Now, what's interesting is this animal is part of the Pachycephalosaurus group, and they are known for having their vertebrae on the spine lined up perfectly when they lower their heads to allow for impact absorption. Perfect for headbutting. This could have been for courting purposes, for competing with other males, for example, for defense. A lot of people believe that, unlike its depiction in Jurassic World, it would have been very colourful. Parts of its body would probably have been brown and grey in order to camouflage itself, but other parts, particularly the males, most likely would have been very colourful, as with many dinosaurs. This is what's interesting about this Pachycephalosaur. The paleontologist Jack Horner had an interesting discussion, and most scientists now believe what he's saying and agree. Let's just take a look at this animal. Sidestep, the cassowary. So the cassowary has a very similar keratin structure on its head. This is an animal, by the way, incredibly dangerous, lives in Australia, in the jungles of Australia and Papua New Guinea. We're discussing something called ontogeny. Now, ontogeny, in this case skull ontogeny, it identifies that there is a change of skull shape. If you think about human babies, for example, a human baby, their skull is quite a lot larger relative to their body compared to adults, humans, if you think about proportions. And there's a number of reasons for that. Adapting to be appearing more vulnerable, to allow adults to basically, this is not just human babies, by the way, this is babies across most of nature, to appeal to the protective instinct of parents. Now, this is across all of nature, but if you look at this specific example, skull ontogeny shows that each stage of this animal's life, it looked very different. But the adult is what you assume is the adult, had this pronounced keratin structure. Now let's compare it with the three animals in the Pachycephalosaur group. You had Dracorex, with very little skull formation of a dome, Stygimoloch with some, and the spikes are resorbing, which means they shrink, and the Pachycephalosaurus with very little spikes, in fact almost no spikes, and the spikes are resorbed to bumps and the dome has enlarged. So this is what most paleontologists believe. Now, Stygimoloch is not actually a separate genus, but is in fact a subadult of a Pachycephalosaur. Now obviously people who have discovered Stygimoloch aren't too happy about this. They have done their best to try and find evidence to support their theory that this is a separate genus. Obviously if you discover a dinosaur you want it to be a separate dinosaur. There's some argument that some of the bones are slightly different, but most people can agree that the fact that we can identify this is a subadult based on the bone structure that we can examine in the fossil, and that Dracorex, we've identified that they are very young animals, again based on the structure of the bones that are the shape of which and the patterns of which are identifiable in the fossils, and Pachycephalosaurus are adults, we can suggest that this is one animal's ontogeny. But what do you think? Do you think that Stygimoloch is a separate genus, or do you think that actually it's just a subadult of a Pachycephalosaurus? Let me know in the comments what you think. Does it deserve its